This is an example of a database information system. In this case, it's a school database. This stores a copy of all student data in the school. It has all of the personal data that you have stored, such as your address, parents' names, phone numbers, etc., as well as a copy of your timetable and your academic and behaviour record. It keeps track of and generates detentions for students based on the behaviour records. Teachers mark the roll every day, and this information is updated on a record of your attendance. If the student is 3 days late, then the year coordinator will issue a detention. This means that at any point your year coordinator can log on and check the information stored to ring your parents, and then also generate and print a detention that then updates the student record to include this information. Now what you'll notice is, as I've been reading through that, I've been underlining some key points. One thing that I've been underlining here is the student data. So the data in this system is very important. I've been underlining any processes that occur. So for example, we've got here issue a detention, that is process, update on a record, that's another process, generate and print a detention. The other thing that I've been underlining here is the people in the system. Now, the thing is that the people generally represent the external entities. So one of the things that you can have here is that you can start to keep track of the kinds of things that you're asked to do. So generally, in a question like this, if this was a HSC question, this would be followed by a question like, draw a context diagram, draw a data flow diagram, explain the information processes that are in the system. So those sorts of questions based on a scenario like this. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to draw the context diagram. Now a context diagram, just to remember, is the system as a circle. So we're going to put in here school database system. And it shows the relationship to the external entities. So we have one external entity here, which is the teacher, because the teacher marks attendance. And we have another external entity here, which is the year coordinator. Okay, and we have another external entity, which we're going to fit up here very faintly, is the student. And the other external entity here is the parent. Now the parent and the student here act more as participants in the system, so they're not really performing any information processes, they're just recipient of any information. So this is a basic level context diagram, but this would only sort of get you half marks in an exam. It shows the relationship between the system as a whole and the external entities here, but it doesn't show any flow of data. So the teacher here marks attendance, so that data goes into the database. So that goes this way. And there's no real data going back to the teacher here, so we don't have to do the other way. The year coordinator, from the school database to the year coordinator, you get parent info and student info. And that would include things like attendance. Okay. The information that goes to the parent would be things like detention dates, reasons for detention. So detention information we're going to put here. Okay, so that goes from the school database to the parent. The other thing that happens is the student might update the database with student details. So the student would generally put the student details or fill out a form in order to put the student details into the system. So that is your context diagram. Now, the main thing to remember with a context diagram is that it is just that one single circle as the whole system. You don't put in more than one circle, and it is just the relationship to the external entities. The other thing that you need to do is a data flow diagram. Now, a data flow diagram breaks up the processes a little bit more. So what we need to have a look at here is we've got a number of processes. We've got a check information processes. So I'm going to tick that off here. Okay. We have generate a detention. Okay, I'm going to tick that up there. We have an update student information. Excuse my circles. Okay, so that's done. We've got timetable, generate detentions. Oh, marking attendance. Okay, so that's there. Updated on the record of student attendance. Students 3 days late, so that goes to the detention. Now we also have some external entities here, obviously. So we've got, oops, the year coordinator. I'm not doing these in a different colour for a good reason, aside from the fact that my pen just changed colour. We have the student, and we have the teacher. Now the other thing we have to worry about is in any information system, you also have a data store. So I'm going to have the database of student records here, and I'm going to call it student database. Okay, so what I've done is the first thing that I do in a data flow diagram is put down all of the things that I need to pay attention to, and then what I'm going to do is draw those up with the lines. So the first thing that happens is the student updates student information. So we've got that there, student data provided by the student. That student information would then update in the student database. Okay, the teacher on another process marks the attendance. Okay, that attendance then updates the student information, which then goes to the student database. Okay, when the information, so from the updated student information, we would then go to checking the information to see whether it is 3 days late or not. Then that process would notify the year coordinator. The year coordinator would issue a detention, okay, which would be updated in the student database, which information would then go back to the student. Oh, that's a lot. Okay, so that's a basic data flow diagram. Again, we then need to look at putting the data on the line. So what information goes from the student to the student information? That's all the student data. Okay, the marking attendance from the teacher to the attendance, so you've got attendance data. Okay, the mark attendance data goes here, so the attendance data and also the student data, because that student data has to come from somewhere. Updating student information, so we're then going to add the attendance data to the check information. So that's going to check. So if it's yes, it's going to add whether to give a detention or not. So we're not going to call that detention info, because the detention info is going to come from the generate detention box. So we're actually going to call this 3-day late list. Goes to the year coordinator. The year coordinator sends the student info and the 3-day list to the generate database. The generate detentions updates the student database with the student and detention information. With the student database. Now we have to look here, when the student data detention goes to the student database, then it notifies the student with detention details. So that might be the date and time of the detention. Okay, and the last thing here, you just have to check that there's data on all the lines. So we go update student information goes to the student database, so that comes from, so the student data goes to the updated database. Now that's messy because I'm just fiddling around with my Bamboo tablet, but you get the idea. One of the best things to do is to make sure that when you're drawing data flow diagrams, draw them in pencil so that you can rub out and try things again, and don't expect to do them in 3 minutes. Like, this is a 4-mark question, which would generally mean that you spend about 7 minutes doing it. So it's going to take some time to do it. Make sure you take the time to underline all the components of the question, because that helps us go through and check that we have everything here. And so we have our context diagram and our data flow diagram for the example of the school information system.